How do you keep chastity alive in a dating relationship? Because as you get closer, you have that desire for union. How do you hold off on the desire for physical union in order to grow in that spiritual, and emotional union until the time is right in marriage for the physical union? So how do you practice chastity? As time goes on, it's only going to get more challenging.
Jason, it's true. It's a very normal, actually beautiful thing. It's a desire for union with someone who you are attracted to, you care for, and naturally, as you said, as the dating relationship moves forward, I mean, in fact, very early on, there's going to be this very intense desire to make oneself a gift. Now, therein lies the challenge because prior to the wedding vows, if you haven't made that lifelong commitment, then the sexual act becomes a lie, right? Because when a couple is having sex, they're essentially saying to one another, whether they're saying it verbally or spiritually or not, I give everything to you. I hold nothing back. It's all yours. And this is something that is safeguarded only within the institution of marriage as God created it. And so naturally, it's a challenge. Because as soon as you start dating, especially as for us guys, where the arousal curve is very high, it's easy for us to go from 0 to 60 within like a look, yeah. Or even holding hands at times. And certainly if a man or a woman has been hooked on pornography, then this complicates the situation even more. Because what is a very natural, beautiful way of relating and showing affection now has a whole nother layer of temptation and muck to wade through. And so I would say that some practicals are, look, keeping Christ in the center of your relationship, praying together, creating healthy boundaries. So naturally, if a couple who wants to be chaste, spends their Friday night laying down together, watching a movie in bed, it's going to be really, I wouldn't bet that night would be left without any remorse or regrets. Like I wouldn't, that would be a very unwise investment option there, at least in my mind. We can't play stupid. All right. Naturally, if we place ourselves in situations where we're going to be physically aroused, where, there's just too much PDA, I mean, not even public, it can be just in the quiet of a room or a dorm or an apartment, whatever, like, if we cross certain healthy boundaries that, frankly, we should have maybe had a conversation about before we even got there. And this is also an important point, is defining the relationship, but also defining the boundaries. I like you. I care for you. I love you. You love me. Sex is for marriage. Let's honor that. Let's honor God and our bodies. Let's honor the fact that until we get married, there's no guarantee that we will be married to one another. So I wouldn't want someone to use my future spouse and vice versa, right? So let's do each other the honor of avoiding situations, right? Maybe it's too much of a temptation to be alone. Date in public. Go on double dates, right? Date with accountability, where you're not just in a room alone. How far is too far? Probably what you wouldn't do in public in front of other people. It's probably too far, unless you're in Vegas.
Yeah.
But anyways,
you're already too far.
Yeah, you're already too far. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Wrong. You can still get an STD and bring it home, Yeah. But defining the relationship, defining the boundaries so as to protect one another's hearts. A really practical thing is like even just something like kissing, making out. If you extend a certain length and duration of kissing, once again, you're asking for trouble. I don't mean to get into the nitty gritty, but if you start French kissing, you're already like priming your brain and your bodies to say, okay, it's going to go a step further. So once again, avoiding certain situations that will lead you to temptation or a lot of frustration, right? Which might eventually lead to sin that you don't want to engage in with this boyfriend or girlfriend in your life. So yeah, I think that's really important. Just defining the relationship, defining the boundaries. And if you happen to unfortunately cross one of those boundaries, which could very well happen, it doesn't mean that your relationship is over, you need to break up. But what it does require, I believe, is a heartfelt conversation at that point. Hey, we went too far there. I didn't feel comfortable with that. Let's avoid that. Let's talk about this, right? Let's even go to confession together. Let's be really intentional about protecting one another. I think that's very important because, we don't have to get into it, but there's a lot of consequences to not having these conversations. There are many, many consequences that are very negative, from unprepared, unplanned pregnancies where you're just not ready for it, to STDs, to ultimately broken hearts, huh? These are not things that God intended when He, put this attraction in people's hearts. He wants you to have a relationship and a love that doesn't lead to regrets or remorse, but leads to joy and freedom and peace. And so, just an encouragement to everyone out there who's fighting the good fight, who wants to do this the right way, the old-fashioned way, the Captain America kind of way. There's nothing wrong with old-fashioned. I don't know when that got a bad rap. I think a tree by its fruits. And so I think, unfortunately, with our culture being so hypersexualized, a tender sort of generation of just hooking up, there's so much emptiness, there's so much hurt, there's so much remorse. And this is not what we were created for. We were created for more. And so, fight the good fight, stay in there, be wise, don't be dumb.
It's kind of crazy that people even talk about chastity as being old-fashioned, as if promiscuity is a modern invention. Like, oh yeah, I think they came up with that in the 90s, didn't they? I was like, no, read the Old Testament. Like, this has been a problem a long time. I mean, promiscuity is old-fashioned, and I think something I often point out when I'm talking to like the high school kids, they're asking like, well, isn't chastity really hard? And I'm like, no, like really not. What's really hard is unchastity. Unchastity is so much harder than chastity. Because I said, think about it. I was speaking at high schools last week in Alabama, and after the talk, I went to the high school classrooms. We went to, the freshman class, then over to the junior morality class, and the seniors, and we're doing these Q&As, and this question came up, and, I just invited some of the students to think, okay, well, let's imagine a girl at a party a couple weeks ago. There are two girls, one practiced chastity, one did not. Maybe at the moment of the party, it might have been hard for the girl being chaste. Like, oh, it seems like everybody else is having that. But right now, look at the two girls. Look at the one that's practicing chastity. What is she worrying about? She's worrying about her math test, tomorrow afternoon. What is the girl who's unchaste worrying about? She's worrying about her pregnancy test, tomorrow morning. Like, who's having the harder day here? The girls that wondering, like, am I getting used? Is that a guy even going to text me again? Am I going to get a disease? I feel guilty. Like, I'm sorry, like no matter what you live, you're going to pay a price. So you might as well pay a price that's actually going to be an investment instead of shredding your money and think you're going to get more cash at the end.